Welcome to another edition of the Ambitious Dads podcast. I am your host, Jeff Hittner. After more than 200 conversations with fathers, I realized we're just not talking enough. Not about our fears, nor our ambitions, nor how our kids are really doing, or how we're holding up in the middle of all of it. This podcast is for the dads trying to build something meaningful and be present at home. The ones carrying a lot, questioning if they're doing enough, and craving honest conversations without the filters. If that's you, you're not alone. You're in the right place. Let's figure this out together. And today we have a wonderful new guest, Jean-Luc Zehnder, who is the co-CEO and founding partner of Virtido, an IT outsourcing company that specializes in nearshore software development and local Swiss project management. Previously, he worked in management consulting at PwC and served as an investment director for a family office. Zehnder holds a master's degree in business administration and economics from the University of Zurich, and he is the proud father of not one, not two, but 3 boys. So we are going to hear all about this. So Jean-Luc, welcome, first of all.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be part of this show.
Awesome. Why don't you tell me, first and foremost, what is it like to be the dad of 3 boys and an entrepreneur? Because it's basically like you have 4 kids, and you want to tell us a little bit about that story?
Yes. I mean, it's obviously fantastic to have both and to see both these worlds. An interesting story is that my company was founded exactly in the same month that my first boy was born. So I always said at that time, I have 2 babies. I have a corporate baby and a real one. That's a kind of a nice story about the start of the business. Obviously, the Virtido grew into a company. Now we have more than 100 staff, but I don't have 100 kids. That's good. But I have 3 now. So this is how life developed over time in the last 10 years. Exactly.
And what has been sort of, well, how does that sit in terms of, I remember, by the way, starting my business more or less within 3 months of my first son being born. And it's a very weird experience, right? Because they're 2 very different births and bringing very different anxieties. You've got to kind of balance both of them, probably imperfectly. How did you go through that process, and what did that feel like?
Well, thank God my wife is quite uncomplicated, and she's not the most risk-taking person, but she's quite flexible and she has a decent job, a teacher. So we have some stability in our lives. The entrepreneur, that helped me a lot. It's a bit crazy. At the end of the day, it was not planned like this. In life, you stumble across an opportunity and then either you take it or leave it. I took it at that time. I was in a family office. That was we had to reduce it a bit. And then I had this opportunity with my co-partner at that time, who was also working in the family office. And we said, okay, let's give it a try. And we've tried. And of course, you have financial uncertainty. Most families, if they get a first kid or a second one, they go into a bigger flat. So we did the opposite. We reduced the size of our flat because of the financial uncertainty. I'm also thankful that my wife was totally okay with that. She even suggested it is cool. At that time, most friends asked, you're moving now, you're going to the bigger one. I said, no, we're reducing. Then some of them were a bit surprised. I think at the end of the day, you take care of your fixed costs. You're aware that you won't have an income for a certain time. You need to have a bit of a buffer and good faith, positivity, and then usually it works out. Sometimes it doesn't, but even if it doesn't, it's worth a try, and then you can go on. And in addition, in Switzerland, I think we live in a very stable country. If, let's say, the business goes belly up, you always have opportunities elsewhere to take on another corporate job. So I think the risk is relatively low if you see it like this and see it as a journey in life and an experience. Yeah.
What was it like to kind of balance your work-life situation while you were trying to build this and having a new baby? Because I think early on that can be one of the most difficult juggles.
Yes. To be honest, if you don't have, before that, I was an employee, and I had a boss and I had clients. And then when you start your own company, you don't have a boss anymore, but you have clients. So, of course, you have the financial pressure on your shoulders. You need to earn a salary, but at least you have the flexibility in terms of schedule. So the office. I just rented a small office just around the corner. So I didn't lose time commuting to some random places. It was quite efficient. Health nursery was around where we lived. It was around sports. The gym was around. So it's quite efficient. I think that's very important to keep logistics. I call it logistics quite efficient. So you don't want to waste time commuting, driving to childcare. If everything is feasible on food, this is the perfect setup. So it provides me with a lot of flexibility on one hand. And of course, the financial pressure is there. Yeah, it's still manageable. It's manageable, but I had some rough nights. I had some nights I couldn't sleep. I think it's part of it. It's not, I'm not wearing the rosy glasses. I had some tough nights. I had some doubts. Sometimes you think, why have I left my corporate nice job and started my own business? And on the other hand, you see your kids growing up, you have more time for them. I'm definitely a father who's around with his kids. And that's very, for me, it's very important. I had a very good time when I was with one of the big four companies, PwC, but there I worked like 10 to 12 hours a day. Now I work less. I work in the evening, in the morning, but I have a better schedule. I can eat breakfast with my family. I eat usually dinner with my family. I'm around if needed. I can go to school, pick them up if needed. I can go to school discussion with teachers. I have a lot of flexibility and my freedom. And that's for me probably the most important part in life rather than the financial things. Yeah.
So you have 3 boys. What is the relationship like between the 3 of them? What is it like for you to have all that boy energy in the house? What's it like for your wife?
You grow into it, and it's obviously very normal. There's a lot of energy around. Yeah, that's true. But I think boys are more straightforward. They don't have those strategies. I think the girls start very early on with those strategies, smart strategies, and the boys are just straight. They like it or not. And I think that makes probably life a bit easier. I have 3 different boys. When the second one was born, I thought, no, okay, it's going to be probably the same as the first one. But then you soon realize that every single child has a different character. And it's so beautiful to see that, they have different characters. And sometimes you see yourself or your wife. Sometimes it's totally random. As my wife and I, we're quite opinionated. Let's put it like this. Others would call it stubborn. And that also then reflects or kind of mirrors to your kids. So they have their own opinion, quite strong opinion, what they want, what they need. It's a constant way of negotiation. You always have to negotiate. Every little thing is a deal. That sometimes it's funny because I'm an entrepreneur, so this is a bit my life. But sometimes you think, okay, why do I have to make a negotiation just for, I don't know, little things like this and this and this? So they like to negotiate. I don't know whether this is the same for you, Jeff, but in our family, everything is negotiated.
Negotiated if they know that there's some wiggle room. So
they know because they know how to negotiate. Usually there is.
Especially around food and dessert. I love this comment that you just made because it's not talked about enough, which is, I mean, as parents, we all eventually come to recognize that their personalities are completely distinct. So this business idea of scaling is completely irrelevant when it comes to the family because the rules, the processes that might work for your oldest son might not connect well enough with your middle son or your youngest son. So how have you gone about sort of not just recognizing that, but accommodating the distinction between their personalities and how you raise them?
Ooh, yeah, it's a tough one. Of course, there's no economies of scale apart from everyone can wear trousers of the brother, and usually the trousers are worn out after 2 years. So there's not that much synergy in that sense. I think it's more about the role. I mean, the firstborn, usually has a bit of a special role because it's the first kid. For us, it took a while before my wife became pregnant, so it was not so easy for us. So he got all the attention, right? And then he was born, and after 3 years, the second one was born. And for the second one, I think you call it the sandwich kids because we have a third. So definitely pay attention to the sandwich kid because especially as the third one required more attention, we thought there was a bit of an autistic element, but it wasn't, but it was not an easy one. So sleep issues, digestion issues with our third one. So we really didn't sleep a lot. And I think in the first 2 or 3 years, my wife and I also had to really take care that we didn't burn out. And again, there, having your own company helped me a lot with the flexibility to support at home. So I honestly, if I had at that time, if I had had a corporate job, I think I would have had to make kind of pause job or maybe do a sabbatical, whatever, because otherwise it wouldn't have worked out. I really had to help a lot at home because we barely slept at that time. This kind of ruins you. It's just if you get the sleep deprivation, this is torture, and you really need to take care about your mental conditions. Otherwise, you really have issues. That was a really tough period when the last one was born. In that period, we also told our older sons, hey, at the moment, you really don't get the attention you deserve. We are fully aware of that, but we can't change it because at the moment, try to survive. So we were in this survival mode for 2 or 3 years, I would say. Now it's way better. Yeah, you have these different roles. So the youngest one received a lot of attention, but also had a difficult start, as I said. And the middle one always thinks he doesn't get enough. I think you can read psychological books about it. I think it's even a term, the sandwich kid. Maybe it's just in German. So you need to take care of him as well. Also, sometimes when they're on holiday, when the school is off, I take a day off, just spend some time with him because I think he deserves it a bit more now than the other two because they don't really think they need more attention. They're happy with the situation. So yeah, I think it's more about the role within the family. And then, of course, every kid has a special character. One is more stubborn. In our case, all three are very opinionated. One eats more. You need to take care that he doesn't eat too much. The other one, you need to take care he eats more veggies. These kind of things, daily business.
First of all, I really appreciate you sharing all that. And I would love, because not enough dads are talking about those difficult blocks of time. And what you expressed was like 2 or 3 years where we were in, as you using your words, emergency mode, right? Talk to me a little bit more about that. First of all, I imagine that impacted work. I imagine it impacted the relationship with your wife. And you've just talked about how you were trying to also communicate with your older children, how much focus needed to be with the youngest. Can you talk a little bit more about what that experience was like so that the other dads that are listening here can realize that they're not alone when they go through emergency periods of time as well?
One of the best things is always how you forget about these periods, because nowadays, if everything is done, all is good, right? Your brain kind of, I think this is probably from Darwinism. You try to survive. And so you forget the bad things, right? That's a good thing. So that's first. Secondly, after the birth, you usually say, okay, it takes 6 to 9 months and then it will stabilize and it's fine again. And then usually after 9 months, you say, okay, another 3 months and another 3 months. So you need this stick of hope. You need to see some light at the end of the tunnel. And this helps as well. Sometimes it's really emergency mode. We call it survival mode, and it is what it is. And I think if you talk about it, it helps a lot. If you talk about it with your friends, with your family, it helps a lot. Then sometimes you get advice from, in our case, really good that we already had an experience. We knew that the third one, the youngest one, that he needed more time. Just imagine if he had been the first one and you wouldn't have the experience, this would be really terrible because then you cannot compare. We knew something is a bit different. And also when you receive this advice, yeah, this is normal. Kids don't sleep, get over it, blah, blah, blah. Then if you're experienced parent and it's not the average, then you can tell at least, hey, I have already 2 other kids and I know the difference. It's not the norm, because all these, let's say, usually people try to help you, give you an advice, but then sometimes it's just the wrong moment. Or if you receive a book, How Kids Can Sleep, and all those tricks in that book, and it's not applicable for this boy because it's slightly different than the norm, then this kind of annoys you, right?
Yeah.
And I think you have to be strong. You also have to defend a bit the situation, and you communicate transparently. As especially men pretend to be strong all the time, but I think we have a right to be weak. We can communicate that. People are understanding. I think it's more a self-inflicted issue of men that they don't talk about it, rather than being open and say, I need a nap maybe, or over lunch. Guys, I need a power nap. Sorry for eye rings, but it's just I didn't sleep a lot the last 3 weeks. Just be transparent about it. People usually are quite understanding. And it's also a bit of other women have the same issues. The kids, they don't sleep. So it's accepted. It's highly accepted by the society. So I think it's worth talking about it, definitely. It helps a lot also for your psychology here. That helps. And I think also being strong as a man, just don't think you have to be strong. You're a human being, so it doesn't really matter. Yeah.
And I appreciate all of that advice. And how did you kind of share that from a work perspective, running a company? By that point, it was relatively mature. You were probably 5 or 6 years in. Did you, bring your colleagues together, talk about like taking on more of your work? Did you just have the same open conversations that you are now with your team? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, we have a very transparent communication among the 3 owners and partners, and also with the team. We have regular meetings, even with clients. You can mention that. We just be transparent about it and say, hey, I'm fully aware that at the moment I probably run on 60-70% capacity, but I can't do more. And then a couple of months later, you do a bit more again. This is something I really appreciated. If you part of the company and you run the company, be understanding, and your peers might go through the same period. In our case, now my younger partner, he has also 1 kid and his wife is pregnant, the second one. People face similar issues and challenges through life. And if you share it, if you're transparent about it, that helps a lot. And I was lucky enough that I was in such a environment that was really supporting, definitely. Well, I told you, if I still had worked in a big 4 company, in a consulting company, this would not work out. I would have to take like a couple of months off. Otherwise you break, basically. You cannot survive. I always say, if everything goes the average path, then it's okay. But with kids, many things can happen. Kids can be sick, can't go to school or childcare. So you always have to be flexible around that. And that requires a lot. And in our case, we have everything. We have childcare around. We have 3 grandparents around. We have fantastic neighborhood. We have all as a support system. You, Jeff, I know you live in Valencia, so you're from the US. So grandparents aren't there, right? So that's a bigger issue. But we have everything. Everything is there, but still it was a big task and it wasn't easy. So also be aware what you have and you don't have. And if you live abroad, probably just acknowledge that you need more external help than if you lived in the neighborhood where you grew up or where your parents live. Yeah. Things like that.
Absolutely. We have a rotating team of babysitters. Yeah. I actually, as a coach, one of the things that you said caught my attention in particular, because I don't know that you're giving yourself enough credit about the culture that you created in your company to be able to have these conversations. And can I ask you to be a bit more specific, other than just like, this is how we do it? Like, what is it? What is there particular tradition? Is it everyone talks about their family at the beginning of a meeting? I mean, you've grown to have over 100 staff, and so that culture is pretty pervasive across the whole organization. So what do you think really created that culture?
I think all three founders have similar ethical standards, I would say. So it's about performance. Performance is very important, but then on the other hand, it's also about being honest, about transparency, and also that people can fail. You can fail. Mistakes are not bad per se, but don't do it 3 times. You can do it once or speak about it. Don't, as I said, transparent. If you make a mistake, then let me know. That's fine, but improve in the future. Don't pretend to be strong. Show your weaknesses. No one is perfect. And also let me know if I can help you. I think this is not, I think it's, we have tons of policies, but this is more for compliance. This is something you live with. Don't write that down. This is the way you talk in meetings, the way you talk to your staff. And this is also something you would stop if someone else wouldn't do it, or would apply different ethical standards. Yeah, this is, and it's through our corporate life, we had to fire employees. You have to do this. Well, I think it's always, if you do it in a very nice way and in a way you would like to receive it, the message or the feedback as standing on the other side, then it helps a lot. This is just a bit the ethical standard we apply. But as I said, it's not something we have written down. It's just something we live.
Okay, so what is keeping you up at night these days as a father?
Not too much. I have a good sleep, but I think I really work on my mental state. So it's very important that your mental fitness is a subject to you that might interest you as a coach, but I believe you can influence that significantly. I know many life hacks to improve my life, and this is something I acquired during probably bad times, and also needed a coach 4 or 5 years ago, where usually I see my glass always half full. At that time, it was always half empty. Then I kind of say, okay, now it was not a crisis, but it was kind of if everything looks a bit more negative, then you probably have to ask yourself what's wrong. And it was very helpful to have a coach also to he kind of opened me the mental world, the psychological world, because this is something you don't learn at school, also not at top performing companies. But, all these little life hacks like meditation, like yoga, like cold plunges, how to train to think positively, that you can basically influence that, breathing exercise, all these things is very important, highly important to a stable mental health. Even though, I don't think I'm kind of prone to any depression or whatever, but if you go through this period of life, you have sleep deprivation, you don't have time for yourself, you have a company, you have a lot of uncertainty, you need to have a stable mental health. It's very important. I think it's a core. If you're happy with yourself, this is very essential. And you need to be a bit selfish, especially if you have kids and they want your time, you have a partner, you have everything, but you need also time for yourself and for your mental health. And often, I think women are way better in talking about mental health. They are a bit more sensitive. Whereas men usually say, well, this is nothing for me. This is bullshit. They have to fall very deep to actually get on that ladder. I was lucky enough that I didn't really have to fall that deep because I'm a bit interested in the topic. So you get into it a bit sooner. But I also had some friends in my network who really had really significant burnouts. And, if you really have a burnout or depression or whatever, it takes you years to come out. So it's really beneficial if you're proactive and think about your mental health, fitness.
Thank you for sharing that. I find that very refreshing. I found an interesting correlation for a lot of the dads that I have had in my programs or that are willing to talk about this vulnerability at some point or another have had a coach really know explicitly who they will go to talk about things that are challenging, right? Which is so important.
And it should not be your partner.
Yes. Tell me more about that.
This is mistake number one, I believe, because I have so many colleagues as well. And usually they say, no, I want to help my partner, but it's not your partner you're not the therapist of your partner because it's a different role. It's very important. Of course, you support, but you rather open a door and say, why don't you go to the therapist or you go to this coach? But it's not your job as a partner, because otherwise I think the partnership changes for worse. Definitely. That's my impression.
Well-known psychologist, particularly Esther Perel, who talks a lot about the expectation that we've laid on our partners, where we expect them to be everything. We expect them to be our best friend, our sexual partner, the mother of our child, our psychologist, all these things, and it's too much. Yep. No relationship can really last in that context. It makes a lot of sense to look for different things from different people. When my wife and I went through our infertility crisis, we had a therapist, and one of the most interesting things that he said was, you have to go through this grieving process, and it's actually going to be very different for each of you, and you need to go see other people for it. So you need to see your friends, Jeff, and your wife needs to find her friends, because what you need in some of these more difficult moments is not going to be complementary. And that was very freeing. In fact, that I think helped a lot in terms of being able to get past our infertility crisis and figure out the solution that we ended up moving towards to have our children. So really appreciate you sharing that. I love to end all of my interviews with a question around the messiness of fatherhood, particularly since you have 3 boys. Can you think of just maybe the most ridiculous, maybe it's poop or pee oriented, or just some other crazy story that you have with 3 boys that you can share?
Well, it's the former you mentioned, of course. Well, essentially, you lose privacy in the bathroom once they start crawling. Of course, I tell them, hey, I'm in the bathroom. Please close the door. I want to have my privacy, but usually it doesn't work. They say, okay, I'll do it, but keep talking to you. And of course, now they grow older. And I think the oldest one, he also requires some privacy. And this is a natural process. So he understands, but the younger one says, no, I want to stay with you and talk to you. So you lose this kind of sense of privacy or also need of privacy in this environment. But I think it's very natural. It's not funny. It's what it is. And it's part of the experience, I would say.
Yeah, now we're down. I can't go to the bathroom without my iPhone, and now you also can't go to the bathroom without your kids. So you're like 0 for 2.
Exactly.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jean-Luc. Is there anything else I should have asked you about that you want to share?
Maybe one last thing is what for me is particularly difficult is to let go your kids and make them, let's say they have to go through their own experience curve, and that's very difficult. This concept called helicopter parents. Mm-hmm. It's widely common, I think, in every country, and it's very difficult to let go. I have to say, it's one of the most difficult parts, just to say, okay, I know exactly what's coming, but I think he or she has to experience him or herself in order to learn something for life, especially at school. If I don't know, an exam is coming and you see he doesn't learn, so it's bad grade, but it's very difficult. And it's for me the most challenging part, not to control everything, because you have to let go and make them their own, make them feel and see what happens in real life. That's for me very difficult. That's something I'm fighting all the time. And even though I'm very conscious about it, it's not so easy. But you have to eventually.
Yeah, I think that actually that's one of the things I'm working on as well. Letting go, I feel, is a lifelong training, both at work, I imagine too, but when it's when it's personal, when it's your kids, that's when it's really about seeing the forest through the trees. And as you were talking about, not just being comfortable, but oftentimes hoping to see a little failure so that they can learn from it, the opportunity for those lessons. But gosh, yeah, it can be very, very challenging to do, especially when you have two parents, because there tends to always be one that wants to step in a little bit more, and then you have to have more conversations about it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I know your time is delicately guarded. You have a lot going on, running a business, you have your 3 kids. Thank you so much for sharing all this with us, and really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure to be part of this show, and hopefully I can also contribute a bit to, or share my experience with other dads, and I hope it helps as well to go through tunnels and see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, absolutely. That should be the name of this episode. So I really
Light at
appreciate
the
it.
tunnel. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.